right, we're back with another daily reflection on the Daily Vedantic. And today's episode is a re-emphasis on the central contribution to the practical side of this philosophy. This is not the highest contribution towards a philosophical reorientation of how we approach the world, but it is the central contribution when it comes to our practical lives. Something that this philosophy puts forward that if you reflect on and you find truth within it, you don't just kind of take it because it's blasted into a microphone, but if you find truth within it and you apply it in your daily life, then everything else cascades from that application. Everything. Every bit of the philosophy, every bit of the life that you want, every bit of the reorientation or that personal development that we all aim for, all comes from this central contribution. And it is a simple one, but it is not found in any other philosophy. Modern psychology barely touches on this in the last few years, has scratched the surface on this, but you don't find this explicit outline in any other philosophy. At least I have not in my years of studying various forms of Eastern or Western philosophy. And that is this central contribution. Within us, we have two equipments to navigate the world. If you listen to the first episode, the intro to Vedanta, we cover this there as well. But this is a concept that many of us might need to hear 100 or 200 times, maybe 1,000 before the penny drops, as Swami will often say, before it actually makes sense to us. So, in an investment towards that, I want to reemphasize this contribution towards our practical living. We have three equipments in total. Your body, which is not groundbreaking for any of us to hear. But then we have these two inner equipments. The mind, also, not going to shatter anybody's lives when they hear that they have a mind, but you also have a subtler equipment called the intellect that is meant to guide the mind. And that's where this breaks from our conventional models of who we are, thinking we are a body and maybe a mind. Maybe you might think you're a soul, but that soul is an essence of you rather than an intellect where it is like the steering wheel for that 1,200 horsepower engine under that hood of the Ferrari. And within this beautiful body of a car built for speed. But if you work backwards from the body of the car to the engine, to the steering wheel, if you don't have an understanding of the steering wheel, how to use it, how it can be used, then you are probably better off not having access to a 1,200 horsepower Ferrari. In other words, it's a shame that we don't know that it exists because of how phenomenally useful it is to navigating the world. But it's also a tragedy to not develop it, because so many of us have these really powerful minds, these wants and desires, preferences, likes, dislikes. And so often we're a slave to those, not knowing that we can rise a little bit higher above them, utilizing our intellect, which is our capacity to see the end in the beginning, which is our capacity to discriminate between right and wrong, between what we should and shouldn't do. For us, there are no thou shalt nots within Vedanta. There are no rites, there are no rituals, there are no things you need to do, you should do. There are no commandments, which means we really need to develop our intellect, our capacity to decide for us what is right or wrong in that moment. Wrong action is described as that which dissipates our energy. It takes a lot of awareness to know what's going to generate energy within us and what's going to dissipate energy within us. And that awareness is cultivated day by day with study and reflection, with questioning, with application of the intellect. But before we can even apply it or cultivate it, before we can develop it, this central contribution has to take hold within us where we recognize, oh, there is a part of me that can discern a layer above likes and dislikes, what I prefer right now to what I ought to do. And that layer above our likes and dislikes, preferences, what is called the mind within Vedanta. That layer above, the intellect, just knowing that we have one, that is the first and most critical step to developing it. In the West, we use phrases like frame of mind or mindset, but we don't go explicitly into telling us what sets our mind. What can we use to shift our frame of mind? Modern psychology is now starting to touch on system 1, system 2 thinking, where there is this thinking fast, thinking slow, perspectival view of our lives within us, in which we can make a decision irrationally and completely reactively, or give ourselves some space to make a decision proactively, less impulsively. And they have termed that system 1 and system 2 thinking, but that's only been in the last few years. Vedanta has been talking about the intellect guiding the mind for thousands and thousands of years. And I had to hear it a couple hundred times before it really hit, before I really started to discover, man, there's this other equipment I have been neglecting nearly my entire life that is this fine, subtle equipment that is the steering wheel to a really powerful engine. And without a feel for that steering wheel, without the ability to guide that engine, and that powerful engine was taking me into ditch after ditch, where I'd think, how did I end up here? Not even knowing that there was a steering wheel that could help me avoid them. That is the central contribution to our practical lives of this timeless philosophy of Vedanta. And the canonical example of it is the mind is like a river, powerful river, and the intellect is like the banks. A river with really weak banks will flood the plainlands, kill all of the livestock, destroy villages and cities. But a river with really, really strong banks that can support multiple civilizations. You have something like the Nile that supports civilizations for thousands of years, and you have something like the Amazon that floods constantly, destroys nearly everything in its path, and no one dares build a city right next to where the Amazon floods constantly. That is the difference between weak banks, a weak intellect, and a strong one. And that's today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Daily Vedantic. This reflection is part of a free repeating 2-year course in Advaita Vedanta. Rooted in the timeless wisdom of the Upanishads, arguably the oldest philosophical texts on earth, you can begin with episode 1, which gives the 15-minute overview of the whole philosophy of Vedanta, or you can join the journey with any episode at any point. But the critical aspect of this course, of understanding and mastering anything, is to study and reflect, even for 10 to 15 minutes on the timeless each day, preferably at the start of your day. As is said in this philosophy, reflection is 100,000 times as powerful as listening. So listen, journal, sit with, discuss these concepts, or ask questions at thedailyvedantic.com with our AI-powered chatbot informed by about 700 episodes here. as regularly as one can if you want to see clarity and peace almost effortlessly unfold in your daily life. And if it doesn't result in a near immediate increase in clarity and peace, then toss aside and feel free to never listen again. One of the things that you might notice is after 7 or 8 days in a row, this doesn't feel like a discipline. This feels like a visit with a best friend to dive into the timeless with daily reflection. Within a few days, it becomes one of your favorite parts of the day. You can also find out more, including news about in-person events in Los Angeles and beyond, at the Daily Vedantic on Instagram or through our weekly newsletter at thedailyvedantic.com. Additionally, check out the links in our show notes for more resources like the books that are mentioned most frequently in the episodes, including Vedanta Treatise, perhaps the simplest and most straightforward read on this philosophy I've ever come across. Until next time, and from the entire team that works on the Daily Vedantic project, thanks for listening.